sound better.
Hope everyone's well. So Moses here with another video for w.a.Production, and today we're going to be taking a little look at how to recreate the CamelPhat bass from Easier. This is a bass line that they use quite a lot in a lot of their production, and it just sounds so nice and warm and fat, so I thought we'd break it down and have a look at how they create it. We're doing this whole tutorial in u.a.'s Tyrol number 6, which is a free synth, so if anyone wants to follow along, they can. You don't need to buy anything, you just need to go and download, and the link is in the description below. So, without further ado, let's listen to what we're going to be making today. So I've made a little recreation of the song. It's not exactly the same as the CamelPhat track, but for the purpose that we're trying to use it for, it works pretty well. So I'll just quickly break down the elements that I've used around the bass line, and then we'll just dive straight into the bass line and how we can make it. So for the drums, we've been using the w.a. sample pack for a lot of it, as well as some Guy samples for the hats to create some loops, and this is kind of what they sound like. So it's a super simple drum beat, just kind of a nice rounded kick with some splashy hats to bring in the highs. But we're not focusing on the drum kits and how they build their drum kits today, we're looking at the bass line. So let's move on, and I'll just quickly show you the lead synths before we move into the bass. Because I noticed that they had a more airy lead over the top and then a kind of arpeggiated one underneath. So, and these are all just using u.a.'s Tyrol number 6. And it's a very basic patch, it's just two oscillators and the sub with a triangle and a saw wave with a bit of detuning and a bit of vibrato going on, and some envelope shaping to help it with some chorus to kind of give it some separation and space in the mix. But like I said, we're not here to look at the leads, and we're not here to do a full track deconstruction, we're just here for the bass. So you can see obviously that there is a whole rack of stuff going on here, and we'll break down each of the elements as we go through. But for now, let's just start off with the main bass itself. For this bass line, you kind of have you've got a low pass filter on it, which kind of gives it that rounded feeling, but it's also got a bit of an envelope on it to kind of open up the filter as each note hits. This is also quite good because with the envelope opening up, you kind of create some room for the kick drum to really do its thing, which is a simple technique, and it's kind of very effective actually. So we'll just play through the bass line. So you can hear as well it's nice and wide, and now this is brought in with the chorus. Because when you listen to their song, the bass, even though it's up front, it kind of sits back nicely in the song, and that is achieved using chorus really to kind of get that separation and that feeling of space. So as I said, it's just transposed down 12 oscillators. We then have some vibrato, which is helping the sounds just to wobble a bit and move and kind of have a bit of personality. We've then got it set to a saw wave, and then halfway between a sine and a pulsed saw wave. Now I'll just take the second oscillator out and the sub out so we can just hear the first oscillator by itself. You can hear that it's not really doing much, it's just adding a nice bit of tone. And then kind of having the sub oscillator in is really nice because it gives it that nice meat to it. And then the second oscillator there just brings in some extra harmonics, not really changing that much, but just adding another layer of sound to what we have. We then have it going to a low pass filter with a tiny bit of resonance, and the cutoff down, not too aggressively with the cutoff because we don't want to cut off all the highs, but just enough so that the highs aren't taking away from the other parts of the track, and also again to keep it that nice warm kind of rounded feeling to it, like it's kind of hugging you. And of course, if you are using this for your own tracks, which I hope you are, then you can really use that cutoff to kind of bring the bass in and out and build some tension and kind of character throughout your song. and it'll be really fun to automate it because you can create a lot of movement just using the filter cutoff. We then have a mod going on here, and that is the source is coming from ADSR2, which is this down here. And you can see I've given it quite a nice little attack to it, no sustain and a bit of decay. And I'll just play it with the mod envelope onto 0. And now I'll play it with what we had it at. Again, you don't need much, but even just that little bit just kind of lets you like lead into the bass sound each time, and it makes it less of an aggressive hit. It makes it expand out as the bass is playing. So if we hear it all in with everything, you'll see what I mean. It kind of gives it a really nice bit of character and a bit of a standout moment in the track, so it's not just a consistent kind of drone going on, which in some cases you can want, but I find that with a lot of bass lines, just having like little bits of movement in them goes a long way into making them interesting to the listener. Now, this bass line isn't super complicated, so there's not much LFO stuff going on, and then there's just a bit of chorus down here, just again to give it a little bit of width and help it sit in the mix a little bit better. We've also got the envelope 1, which is our amplitude envelope. Again, I've got a bit of attack going on here and a bit of a decay and kind of sustain but pulled down a little bit, so you kind of have an attack, sweep in, and then it kind of goes down, which again gives it a little bit of character and a little bit of movement to every single note. So now we've had a little look at the patch itself, let's have a look at some of the processing I've done. And we'll kind of just break down a bit of how to get it sounding nice and fat in the mix. Let's just turn everything off just so we can hear what it sounds like without this on. So one of the first things I've added, and now this was actually highlighted in some of our 3 mastering plugins video. This is Brainworks Subfilter, and you can go and have a look at the other video if you want to learn a bit more about this, but basically this just helps you with the low end. And we've just given it a bit of beefing up around 40 Hz and also taking down the low end a little bit just so it doesn't fight and doesn't become too much. So I'll play you that with it off and now with it on. You can hear how it just helps to bring up some of those sub frequencies a little bit and kind of really, like, again, rounds off the bass, because this is a bass that needs to hug you in the rave. Not that we can go to them at the moment. We've then got a bit of chorus, providing a little bit of space, and this is just the Ableton stock chorus. You can use any chorus you want, they all kind of do the same functionality. So I've actually used the chorus in an audio effect rack rather than using the dry wet knob. So we've got one chain here, which is the dry signal, and one chain here, which is the fully wet signal. And now this is one of my favorite tools in Ableton because you can just get the craziest parallel processing going on. You know, you can have as many of these chains as you want and just load them full of distortions and choruses and reverbs. And it just is nicer because it means you're not taking up space on your reverb and send and return channels. So this really frees up those things to be used as just kind of global effects. And now you can increase the amount of chorus just by using the actual level here. You can hear how even when we introduce it fully wet, it kind of doesn't take away from the sound, and you still have that really solid centered bass sound, and the chorus just kind of envelops it around the sides. And now this is a technique that I would recommend pretty much anyone using if you can, and it's definitely, I know I've said it already, but it's definitely one of the highlights of Ableton. There aren't many other softwares that you can do this specific type of processing. You can do something in FL Studio, which is similar, and I'm not quite sure about Pro Tools or Logic. I think you pretty much have to set up auxiliary channels to be able to do this. However, if anyone does have a technique that they use for parallel processing, then please drop it in the comments, as it will really help a lot of people out who use those kind of softwares and want to do this kind of processing. We then have the M equalizer. Now this is a great equalizer again that is highlighted in the best free mastering plugins video, where I go into a little bit more detail about how it works, the different parameters that you can have running on it. And now this has got a bit of saturation going, and I've also just ducked a little bit from around 800 Hz. You don't need to do this, but I find that if you did do this and you have a vocal over your track, it will make a lot of room and give a lot of space for that vocal to sit really clean in the middle of all of your sounds. It also, again, helps with that kind of warm hug feeling that we're going for with this bass line. We then have Ableton's sidechain compressor, and now this is just, again, just doing a very basic sidechaining thing. There's loads of information out there on sidechain compression, so I'm not going to go too much into it because it's a very simple sidechaining that I've done. Finally, we've just added a little sub bass. This is again using Tyrrell number 6, and it's just using a sine on oscillator 1, which just brings in some warmth. And now the whole track back together. And now also compared to the original track that I was basing this off. So yeah, thanks for watching this. It's been a lot of fun to make this, and I hope that you can take this and use it in some of your own productions to really get that radio-ready CamelPhat sound. It's a sound that can be used in so many different features and is great for those kind of techno-y, kind of deep house style tracks, but can also be used for stuff like drum and bass, dubstep. Get creative with it and have a lot of fun, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Peace out.